Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today's topic is going to be discussing kind of a larger topic as a whole, which is the AD carry meta, and why it exists, and kind of what might have to change if we wanted to stop having it for whatever reason. There have been a lot of people on the boards recently discussing how they don't want to have AD carries as a mandatory role in every game, and what might possibly have to change in order to make that work. Now, if you really do think about it, League of Legends does require AD carries as a class. You can have mages mid, assassins in the jungle, bruisers top, tanks top. Every class in the game kind of has their day in the limelight. However, one thing is always constant. You always have a marksman, at least one marksman in the bottom lane, I should say. And this isn't a thing that has existed for League of Legends' entire lifetime. There has been a time, especially early on, where marksmen did not get played or were not a necessity in League of Legends. However, if you really think about how League of Legends is structured, League of Legends is an objective-oriented game. You must take objectives in order to win a game of League of Legends. It does not matter how effective you are killing your opponents or CCing them or whatever, you have to be able to kill towers, and ideally you want to kill towers as efficiently as possible in order to actually proceed to your enemy's base and eventually take the Nexus. And the best champions of the game at that, as it turns out, are, you guessed it, marksmen, because they have the best range damage per second of any class in the game. And now this is fine for them to have. I think that they have trade-offs because they can deal so much range DPS, but it does mean that they are the most effective class in the game at dealing with towers, and as such, when League of Legends was starting to become optimized by the rest of the player base, AD carries were the class to go to, and you had to have at least one if you wanted to be able to push towers faster than the other guy, or at least at the same rate as the other guy. So AD carries kind of became standard, and this happened after the Season 1 Worlds when Fnatic brought out the AD carry support meta bottom lane. Now, why bottom lane? Bottom lane because that way AD carries are close enough to Dragon, which is another objective that, again, will melt under sustained damage per second from a range. AD carries are also partnered with the support because they don't really care about experience as much and they're weak early. AD carries scale extremely well with gold and not really so much levels, so they can afford to lose out on some experience in order to get more damage faster with gold. The rest of the game kind of filled in around them. Obviously, you need one champion in the jungle, and you can really only have one champion in the jungle because it doesn't have the income to sustain two champions. And mid and top lane champions were both kind of chosen because they scale well with levels, and mid laners especially are decent at roaming, so more so than standard top laners, I would say. Excuse me. So, with this in mind, that's kind of why AD carries haven't played ever since, because League of Legends has increasingly become optimized throughout the years, especially with professional play and ranked, and just the sheer length of the game. AD carries will always be around. That being said, bot lane AD carries may or may not be a thing that always happens. I don't think you necessarily have to always have a marksman in the bottom lane as long as you have one elsewhere. And this was the biggest success point of the marksman rework about a year ago, is that it did enable AD carries to be played in other positions. You have things like Graves and Kindred in the jungle, or potentially top lane. You have Quinn top lane. You have Ezreal and Corki mid lane. So you do have AD carries that can be played in other positions now, and that's great. However, this hasn't solved the problem of what do you do with your bottom lane with the support. Almost every other class in the game requires a decent amount of solo experience or succeed. Bruisers scale really well with level, mages scale well with level, assassins scale well with level, and it's difficult to find another class that scales as hard with gold as AD carries. There are certain champions that do, sure. Jax definitely scales very well with gold, ideally more with levels, or probably more with levels, I should say, but he does scale decently well with gold. Yasuo is another champion that scales decently well with gold, but it's not usually enough because you need range in order to kill objectives effectively. So for a while we've been sitting on top of this because we found out it works, and it's been working for the last 5 years, so why bother innovating? This doesn't necessarily mean that it's here to stay, however. And I don't think that if you wanted to change the AD carry meta away from requiring an AD carry, that it should be anything Riot should specifically try to do. In fact, I think they've been balancing the entire game around having a marksman in the bottom lane in the support role. I think that they prefer it that way, in all honesty, because especially with esports, they like having players in specific roles or positions, especially when you had the double jungling in the LCS for a while. I don't think they really enjoyed that, because then you don't really have a top lane. It's a 4v0, so your top laner is in the bottom lane, or he's with the jungler, and then can he really be said to be a top laner at that point? They don't like having malleable roles. They like having players playing in specific positions. However, I could see the AD carry position becoming a bot position instead of being called AD carry. And I think this is on the player base, really, to find a way to optimize the game instead about having AD carries in different places. Now, and this is no easy task. I think that, in fact, this is probably one of the hardest things for us to do as a community if we really wanted to find a way to make it work. However, I don't think it's impossible. I just listed a couple of champions who scale reasonably well with gold as opposed to levels, and I think that there are a few champions that do decently well in the bottom lane against so much harass. I do feel it's not a thing that could always happen. I don't think you could say, I can always pick this champion in the bottom lane with a support, regardless of what the enemy team is picked, just because melee and ranged always have very interesting interactions, and if the enemy bot lane will always have a ranged champion, you pretty much want to field one yourself. However, I do think there are ways to figure it out. Maybe you play champions that can deal decently with range, like Alawi or Yasuo in the bottom lane, to kind of subvert that advantage and pair them with a champion that can make up for their deficiencies. Maybe you play a mage or an assassin and you try to snowball the lane. There are other ways you can do it. I think what it really requires is enough players dedicating themselves to experimenting and trying to figure out a better way to optimize. Now, and the biggest problem with this is because League has a very meta-heavy focus, I guess you could say. League players, as a rule, almost don't like experimenting at all, because we all want to be right. We want to be doing the right thing, playing the right champions, and all that kind of thing. So it becomes difficult for us to justify experimenting when, you know, we could be doing something that's conventional. Why would I play Yasuo bottom lane and risk getting trolled at my teammates when I could just play Caitlyn bottom lane, who we know is already going to be optimized? So, but that's the kind of experimentation I think as a community we can look at and try to find a way to make it so that AD carries aren't a mandatory thing in the bottom lane. I don't know if it's possible or not, but at the very least it's on us to experiment, and it's not really on Riot. So for the people complaining on the boards, don't complain at Riot. This isn't really their fault. They, in fact, never intended the game to be played this way. They just kind of went with it. So if you want the AD carry meta to change, if you want to find a way to make AD carries, there will always be a requirement, but if you want to find a way to get them out of the bottom lane and into other lanes as well, that's on you guys to kind of look for a way to make it happen. Thank you everybody so very much for watching this video. I do appreciate it. I will be gone, not doing much content at all over the weekend, and perhaps for the next couple days afterwards, as it is Christmas time, and I will be celebrating with my family. So don't look forward for Monday. Probably won't be a podcast going live on that day. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Again, I do appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button, as it does support me in what I do, especially if you want to see more content like this. And if you do want to see more content like this, go ahead and check out grabthelantern.tumblr.com, as I upload an article just about every other day. I will talk to you guys all later.